Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for another Journaling on a Budget Extra. We are making a lap book and today we are going to put the cover on our cover. And so now if you want to wrap your paper or fabric around your cover, you're going to need to start this back towards the beginning. You would need to cover your cover. Now, I don't cover my cover in the beginning because, you do so much with it. And then what happens is, like on one of these, I got some glue and I wiped it off and it left a mark here. And so, I prefer to cover my cover towards the very end. On this one, I don't know if you can see it, but there's different spots here where I have where I ink the edges and I got a little bit of ink on there. So, but if you want to cover your cover, I will put what video to start with, what video to do that before in the description box below. And, that'll be right towards the beginning, like before the second or third. I'm not exactly sure where, but I will put that below where to go back to start there. And in that description box, I will put, if you want to wrap your fabric or wrap your cover, do it now before you go any further. So, but what I like to do is I just cover mine just to up to the top edges of my book. So what I've done is I have chosen some papers to put on my inside covers. So those are going to be there. I have fabric to put on the cover and to put on all three spines. And then I have the actual cover paper that I'm going to put on the cover. Now, the book is 5.5 by 8.5. And I think what I want to do is I want to leave just a little bit of this blue border on the top and on the bottom. So I think I'm going to, because if I cut it exactly right there, I don't know. It's always so hard to do, to figure out exactly what you want. So let's look at it if we have a little bit of blue sticking out. I like it with the blue sticking out, not too much. So I'm going to cut off about maybe 1/8 of an inch for the top and 1/8 of an inch for the bottom. So I'll cut off 1/4 of an inch. Grab a cutter here. I'll just cut off 1/4 of an inch. So instead of 8.5 tall, I'm going to make it 8.25. And again, whatever size book you have, you would adjust it for your size book. And now I've committed, so I'm stuck with it. And I like that. Now the edges don't matter. My fabric's going to come around the edges, so I don't need to have a gap or anything there. And what I do is I put all of my papers on first, and then I put my fabric on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. This one is actually my cover. I have more of the swan on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one down to 8 because I have to have these cut anyway. So go ahead and cut this one. This one is for the inside and it's already cut. So I'm going to cut this one down to 8.25. So this is my front cover, and I'm going to set that up on the top just out of my way. And then I need to cut this one down to 8.25. There we go. And I'm going to use Fabri-Tac to glue these down because it's going to stick very well to my fabric and everything. Now what I have done is we've had this little bit of string on the outside of our book the whole time that we've been working. Now that I'm getting ready to glue my fabric onto this cover, the spine, I want to go ahead and pull that to the inside. And I want it, where do I want it? Do I want it at the top or do I want it in the middle? I want it at the top. So I want to make sure that I have that where I want it before I glue that material on the spine, because it's not going to move once I do that. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Excuse me. Because we are going to put a little book in here, a writing book in here, so I don't want it right up to the top because I just don't. Okay, so now let's do the inside first, and I'm going to do it like that. Now these seem just a little bit wide. They're actually touching where the spine has the rounded bit, and I think I would prefer to have it inside that where it's only on the flat cover of my book, not on this rounded part of the spine here. I want to come into the flat part of my book. And my material, my fabric is going to come out to this blue spot. So I won't have to worry about that. So I am going to cut off just over 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to do that really quick. So this is 5 1/2, so I'm going to do it just under 5 1/4. Oh, now I also have to decide, because I've left the blue at the top and the bottom, do I want to leave the blue on the inside edge? And I think that I do. I think I like that blue going all the way around the 3 sides. So I'm going to cut off just a little bit more. So maybe about 5 1/8. See how that works. If I put that right up to the edge, yes, that leaves the perfect amount. So we're going to cut this one down also to 5 1/8. And that will fit nicely too. Alrighty, so I'm just going to use the Fabri-Tac. You want to make sure that you get right out to the edges. And you can use any glue that you want. And when I do the covers, I do like to use cardstock. I did find a piece of paper that I liked, scrapbooking paper. But you know, it's the cover, especially the outside cover. It's going to get some wear and tear. So cardstock is just a better option than paper. But everything is an option. You can make your own painty paper. You don't have to have scrapbooking paper for this. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball my edges here. That looks really good. And then I'm just going to use something. I'll use my ruler and just burnish it down well. Get any lumps out of that glue. I'm going to push a little harder going this way, and that way if it pushes any glue out the edges, it's going to push it out on the spine. There, that feels very nice. Okay, so we'll get this one on here. And then I didn't cut a piece of paper for the back cover. And we're going to see what it looks like if we just leave it blue. But you know, I don't know that that's going to be very good. I should have maybe cut a piece for the back cover. I was going to leave it blue, but now that I'm thinking about it, you know, the way that you fold it up, you see both covers. We'll see. We'll see kind of what it looks like when we get that far. Just kind of eyeball this one and look at my other one too to try and make them all about the same. That looks good. And then I'm just going to burnish this down because the Fabri-Tac does leave like a bump. You know, if you put a line of Fabri-Tac, you're going to have a ridge. You'll be able to feel that. So, and you also want to burnish it just to get that glue out to the edges good and to get the whole thing really pressed down onto your book. That feels nice. The edges all look good. For some reason this edge doesn't look like it's not down perfectly. So what I'm going to do is put just a little bit of glue on a piece of paper, because it's just barely, just the edge of that corner is not stuck down. There's not enough to get my glue bottle in there, so I'll just use this and rub that glue underneath that spot. There we go. That's much better. So that's what you do if you have a spot that you didn't get glued down, and it's not like where you can pick it up and put glue underneath of it. Also, then if you were to try and squirt some glue under there and you squirted too much, it's going to squish all out. So when you use the paper just to get it under there, it works better. So there's our inside. This is our front cover. And again, I don't want to be on this lip. And I also have to remember that a little bit of it's going to be covered. I'm just going to take, I don't want to be on this one either. So I've got my little groove there and the little groove here. So I'm going to cut it down right to about there. That looks like it's about 1/4 of an inch. And that's exactly what it is 1/4 of an inch. So let's see how that does. Yes, that's completely inside. Okay, and then we've got our top and our bottom. So we're going to glue this one on. The one thing about the Fabri-Tac is, especially when your bottle is kind of full, you need to make sure you put the top on it. You know, I used to watch people use it and think, why do you put the top on that glue? You're going to use it in 2 seconds. If you don't put the top back on it as soon as you're done using it, it will start spitting out the top. Now, once it starts getting down, that doesn't happen as much. But it also does, you know, get really thick. So that's another reason to keep the top on it. And I've heard that if it gets too thick, that you can put a little bit of acetone, like fingernail polish in there, and that will thin it out. I have not tried that yet, but I've had people say that. So if you have one that's just too thick and you're having problems using it, that's something you could try. I want to make sure that it's straight. I've got about the same distance top and bottom. We'll get this burnished down. I've got some bumps still here in the middle. There, that feels nice. Okay, so we've got that. So we have this, and it's going to have this on this side, and it's going to have this over here. That's what that's going to look like. Now, the back. If we were to have our book, and it looked like this, and we pick it up, this would be our front, this would be our back. Yeah, I don't like that. So we are going to have to cut a piece of paper for this. Keep our fingers crossed that I actually have one here. And I do, I think. Yep, that's going to be tall enough and big enough. So I'm going to cut this to the same size as the front. Oh, I was trying to pick that up. That's not going to happen, is it? So I'm just going to go here, and I'm just going to put a little mark on here. Just line it up with that. Put a little mark here, and then line it up sideways. Line it up at the top. Put a little mark here at the bottom. So I'm just going to cut it there real quick. Well, that didn't help me. I cut off my bottom mark now. Ooh, and somehow I cut that way too small. Good thing we have an overlap. Must have been something on the paper that I thought was my mark. Or either that or I wasn't paying attention. Okay, so let's see here. That's still going to fit perfectly. Okay, I like the looks of that. Now I'm not going to do the spotty side because that's what we have on the inside. So I'm using the rest of the front side, which is just the same kind of background pattern but no design. And the nice thing about that is it will let you know what's the front and what's the back if you do them just a little bit different. My other one is very much the same, the one that I use myself, and I'm constantly opening it upside down or backwards because the front and the back everything is exactly the same. Yes, I don't have enough over here. And also these edges will be covered with our fabric. I want to make sure I stay away from the groove. Line up my top and my bottom. Make sure it looks straight. And I apologize if this noise is irritating, but it's something that we have to do. We really need to do this part. Especially since this is your cover. It's still a little bit lumpy. There, and that feels good. Okay, so now we have our fabric on. We have our paper on, and we're going to put our fabric on. So we'll start with the outside edge. Now I wanted to show you what I've done is I have cut my fabric and fringed it, whatever, right to the edge. Well, I thought I did it right to the edge of the top and the bottom, but I didn't. It's a little bit big for that. So I do want to have it shredded right to, I think that I went to the edge of the fabric that I left on there, but I just left enough fabric on there just to have enough. And so we'll just trim that down after we get this put together. So what I am going to do is I'm going to line this fringe here on the bottom up with the bottom of my book, and then for the top I'm going to need to come all the way down to here. So I'm going to need to pull the threads, and I brought an extra piece to show you how I did this, but I'm going to have to do it here anyway. So all you do is you pull the threads. Now you actually can only pull them pretty much one or two at a time because they're woven around. The ones that we're pulling are going this way. They're woven around all the ones that are going that way. If you try and pull too many, like see, it's going to just start knotting up. You can't pull that many. You can only pull one or two. And once you get it started, and then if you get a point where I've got one that's kind of stuck in here because of what I did, and so just take a pin and just go ahead and lift that out of there. See, I have too many. I had 3 of them there, and 3 just will not work. And so you just do that until you get your solid fabric so that it's even with the top of your book, and all you have is some fringe left over. And I'm going to have more fringe than I want at the top, because if I line this up at the bottom, my fringe is going to come all the way down to here. So what I'll do after I get that all off of there is I will trim that a little bit shorter. And then we're going to glue it onto our book right here. So what I did was I cut my fabric approximately the size that I wanted it, a little bit larger. And what I've done here is I've made the fabric go from the white piece of fabric inside here to the white piece of fabric inside there. That's where it's going to line up at. And so I made my fabric a little bit bigger than that. My fabric was probably out to here. Then I shredded it, and then I just trimmed it down a little bit because when I didn't cut it, I ripped it. And so the edges were very, they weren't nice. So you're going to cut your fabric a little bit bigger than you want it all the way around. Then you're going to shred it until your solid piece gets to be the size that you want it. And then we're going to glue it on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to shred this all the way down right here to the top of my book. And then we will glue this on. And let's double check these to make sure that I didn't make them too long. And I did. Yes, what I did was I lined it up with my white fabric, but I don't want it sticking out that much. I want my solid fabric at the top of my book with just a little fringe hanging out over the top and the bottom. So I'm going to shred these so that the solid material is exactly the height of my book. So this one will be shredded right down to here. And then I'm even right here at the bottom. And then I will be back and we will glue them on. Okay, I am back and I have shredded the ends of my fabric so that the solid fabric lines up with the top of the book and the bottom of the book, and then I have fringe hanging over on the top and the bottom. And I did leave the top just a little bit longer than the bottom, and I've already done the back cover. So we're gonna, or the back, I don't know what you're gonna call that, the back spine. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take this, and this is going to line up with a little bit of the blue, the dark blue, left on each side of my book. So that's how I will line it up, and that will center it on my spine. And then I'm just going to put this to the top and see where my white comes to. And my white looks like it's pretty much the same height as my blue. Now I do want the white to be a little bit ragged, so I'll pull a few strings off the top of that. And it might be a little bit taller than the blue, and if it is at the end we can just cut it down, but I want to make sure that there's enough shredded so that if I do have to trim a little bit of the top, I still have some shredded bits. So because I like it to be kind of, shredded, furry, however you want to say that, fluffy. And so now if I'm going to line this back up here, and then I'm going to look at the bottom, and the bottom is actually a little bit too long, so it's going to come right to about here. So I definitely want to shred a little bit more of this one so that when I trim that down after I glue it together, I've got the shreddy parts, if I can get a hold of it. Just get a few of these out of here. Over here I've got some that didn't get shredded. Not sure how that happened, so I'm going to get a few of those out of there. Okay, so that looks pretty good, I think. Let's just try and get that last one that I started, try and get it out of there. There. Okay. So now we are going to put glue on our fabric. When I glue fabric to something like this, I put the glue on the fabric because I've got my little shreds all the way around, and I don't want glue on those, and I want to know exactly where it needs to go. So I am just going to make sure that I get my edges first and not get it on my fringe, because I want my fringe to be loose. Now you might not want fringe at all. You might want to just not have fringe, cut your fabric exactly straight all the way around to the right size, and then glue right out to the edge. I like to have that fringy bit. It does get messy after a while, after you've used the book and, you know, put it down and picked it up and opened it and closed it. Those little fringy spots get very, you know, kind of scraggly or something, and that is the look that I like. You know, I like that better than the way they look right now. The way they look right now to me is a little bit too, you know, just kind of too straight and flat. And you can mess them up, you know, just kind of after you get it all glued together, just kind of mess them with your fingers and stuff, rub them back and forth and get them messy, but they'll do it all on their own in time, so I don't bother with that. But when they get nice and fluffy like that, that's the way I like them the best. And I just stuck my finger right in the glue. Not a good idea. So there we go. I've got the whole thing covered really well. Now my top fringe is a little bit longer than my bottom. Now that I have a cover on my book that actually has a top and a bottom, I know that that's the top. So I'm going to carefully get a hold of this and line it up where it needs to be, both even with the blue on each side and even with the top. Come down to the bottom and do the same thing. See if that looks good. That is good there. That is good there. Okay. Okay, now that I've got that pressed on a little bit, now I am going to close my book. And I'm going to go into those dented spots. And I'm going to turn it this way because this is the way the book actually sits. This is our inside. So I am going to push the fabric into the little dips in our spine on the front and on the back. Now on the front and the inside, it has more of an angle, and that is because we've stood it up inside the book here. And so it pushes that out just a little bit. And then the back is a little bit straighter, but we still want to make sure that where those little dents are, that we push right into there, get that glue in there, get your glue on all over, kind of push down on it like this so that I'm not really messing the fringe up too bad right from the start. And then again, just go in there, and you need to kind of work this a little bit because it takes a few minutes for that glue to really catch and dry. And I really want it to catch and dry. So you're not going to wind up with a big indentation, but I just want to know that my fabric is actually glued to those spots because that's where it's going to open and close. And there we go. So now we have our back and our front. And see, now this one has a little bit more of a dent in it because I have worked that more. So I'm going to go back in here and really work this better so that they're a little bit more alike, and just so that I know that I've got that glue on there. And I kind of had more, you know, I had a lot of time when I did that one because I wasn't on camera, but I definitely want to get this on here like this. And then what we'll do is, this end is a little bit long, so we'll trim that white off of there. But really kind of get that rubbed in there really well. You do what you want to do when you need to do it, when you have a glue that's a little bit fast drying, because you can't go back and do it later. I can't go and put more glue under this later, so I kind of want to get this part done this way. Get a nice crisp corner on this one. Get that back edge. And there we go. I think that's pretty good. I don't think I have any more stick with my glue. I think that it's pretty much grabbed. kind of do this maybe and hold it. Go back one more time. And it may be really boring to watch this part, but it's an important part. You want to make sure that you've got that really the way that you want it. There, and that looks, to me, that looks much better. Okay, so maybe even get a little bit better of a crease on this side. Okay, so now we have both sides of our opening spine here. So now we have to do this one here. Now, first things first, so that we don't forget that part, let's go ahead and we'll look at the top and we'll see that we've got a little bit of white sticking over. Now, if you want the white sticking over, you can leave that like that, or you can just open it up and just give it a little bit of a trim. Just like that. Just a little bit more. And I just want to be careful because I really don't want to trim my blue part. So there we go. And let's go to the bottom, and we've got a little bit sticking out here also. I'm going to pull that out straight. Well, try and get in there. Sometimes as you're working with these, they can be a little bit unruly because they're so big. But when you use them, they're not. At least that's what I have found. When I use mine, I really do like it. So there we go. Okay, so now we have those all ready to go. Got a little bit longer on the top, a little bit shorter on the bottom. Now these are really going to get mushy too, depending. I always lay mine like this. So, but if you want to stand it up, those will really get nice and fluffy. You don't have to have those there. You can cut them off. It's your book. You can do it however you want to. Okay, so now the last one that we have is our big one. Now, with our big one, I had put 2 pieces of fabric, one over my spine, and then one on the inside of my spine. And so I have 2 pieces of fabric. So I have to decide what am I going to do about those 2 pieces. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this. I'm going to cut this one down a little bit, and then I'm going to glue it down to the spine because you can see a little bit of the board there. And so I'm going to glue it right down there, and it will catch a little bit at the bottom of this. Now I need to make sure that I have this one. Before I start gluing things together, I need to make sure that I have this one as fluffy as I want it. So I think I'm going to take a couple more strings off of here. And again, remember, just grab the top string and it will make it go a whole lot faster because you're not going to get a knot. Maybe just this very last one right here. There. Alrighty. Now this one, first things first, I'm going to cut it down first. Somehow they got glued together already. Alrighty, so I'm going to cut it just barely with much left, just enough that I can fold it over and glue it to the top of the cardboard and the top of the book cover. There we go. And that's a telemarketer, so I'm not going to answer it. I don't ever turn my phone off because sometimes I get calls that I just need to take. But usually they're telemarketers. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of glue right on top of the book cover, on top of the cardboard that I made the big spine out of, and just a little bit. and then on top of the book cover, right over here. There we go. Put the top back on my glue, and then I'm just going to fold this in. So there we go. Make sure I get contact all over the place. And there. Now we're only dealing with the one that's on the outside that we want to back our larger piece of paper or piece of fabric. And just, you know, just to have them there by each other, just because that's the way I like it. Now, you could cut this one off too and fold it in this way. You know, cut this one and fold it this way so that you wouldn't even have the little white fringy part. I'm going to look at the bottom and do the same thing. Now with the bottom, I have a little bit of a problem here. With the bottom, I have glued it down under the other. So can it come out? The outside edge did. Let's see. I'll grab my pokey tool. See if I can pull it out. Because I really want the back side. I don't want the inside. But if I can't get it out, I could fold the back side down, glue it down, and then I would have the inside. And here it comes. And I actually could cut this off now because I think I have plenty out. But those are the kind of things that do happen. And if they happen, you can't fret over it. You just have to figure out how are you going to fix it and go from there. So there we go. I get about a string stuck in there right there. And that was because I had left the back part so long. And I did it on purpose because I didn't know exactly what I was going to need. And I figured I could always trim it off, but I wasn't paying attention. And just glued it right in there. Okay, so there we go. So first things first, I'm going to get that out of my way. And I'm going to trim this one down so that I can just glue it like we just did the other side. And because this is just the same as before, you can always just fast forward through this part. But it's easier for me to just keep going sometimes. Get that out of my way. A little bit too much right here. It's not straight. And it's still not straight. Well, that's because I can't cut a straight line anyways. There we go. We'll get some glue on there. And then we'll have to measure this part to see how much we need to, whoops, how much we need to take off that to make it the same length as the piece that we're putting on our spine, the blue piece. So first things first, we'll get a little bit of glue in here. Now, if you had wrapped this way back in the beginning, you wouldn't have to be doing this part right here because you would already have your cover on. And sometimes as you do these things, you're going along and, you kind of have it planned out, and then you get to a point where you're like, ew, didn't think about that, which this is kind of one of those things. Although, I never thought about it really with this book having all of the parts and stuff to it. Usually I make books with the rubber band binding, so all of my parts come right out, and I do my covers at the end. But this one wasn't like that, so I didn't think about the fact that how was I going to do it at the end. But I think it's working out just fine. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to, this is the top, I'm going to line this up here. Okay, and my white is good there. I'll turn it around so it's easier for me to look at. I'm going to line it up here, and I need to come down that far. So I'm going to take some of this off right away and then shred it a little bit. And then I can trim it better if I need to after I get it glued together. And I know that, again, you can fast forward through this part, but I don't want to skip my shredding because I like the shredded parts. I can tell this corner down here is gonna have to be cut because it's taller than the rest. There we go. There. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over because this is my top, and I have longer fringe on the top, so I know that this is my top. And we're going to put glue on here and put this on the book, put it together the same way, do our pushing and, making sure that we get it stuck together well. And then we will have our cover covered and we can see what it looks like. I'm just watching where my little fringe is on that edge so that I don't get glue on it. Get a really nice amount of glue on here because it is a spine. I kind of think the spines are the most important spot to really be careful with your glue. Make sure you get enough because it's going to be opening and closing over and over. Get rid of all those little extra threads that were there. Bring this back in. I think I'm going to kind of go get the glue off my hand. Kind of hold it corner to corner, I think. I'm going to line it up with the top. And line it up with my white fabric. Now on this one I'm going to kind of look and see from the edge of my book to here, probably about 3/4 of an inch. Yep, that looks pretty good. With these ones we had the blue lines where we could really make sure we had it kind of lined up, but on this one give that a good press it right down into those little grooves. Press it right on top of that stretchy string that's underneath there. I should have checked the stretchy string to make sure it was in the right spot before I glued that down. It is, because we adjusted it earlier, but I should have checked that. So we'll just give this a good press. Now there's not as much dimples in this because this is where we glued in the piece of cardboard, so it doesn't have the same like dimple along the edge here. So we don't have to worry about that as much on this one. We just want to make sure that we get those sides good contact here. Pull up our white spots and got just a little bit right here. And that looks good. A little bit more. There we go, and then check our bottom. Okay, I'm going to trim this because I'm trying to hurry and I don't want to ruin it. I will trim that bottom just like I've trimmed everything else. So there we go. Now we have our cover covered. And this is what we have. Now if we want, we could put a book plate on here to put a name on it. We could put a book plate on the spine. We could do some decorating of the spine, but for this point, we have got the cover covered. And next I will come back and put in the book, and I think we will put on the closures, and then we will finish up any last bits of decorating. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too confusing, and I really do appreciate you all stopping by. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.